So there's a state representative in Texas. He's a progressive. He's called James Talarico. And he has been publicly dismantling Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, his corruption and education scam surrounding school vouchers. So let's check it out.
Greg Abbott is selling this private school voucher scam by calling it school choice. But it's not school choice. It's the school's choice, because private schools can deny admission to any kid for any reason they want. So how is it choice when the private school has all the power? How is it choice when a majority of counties in the state of Texas don't have a single private school in them? How is it choice when private schools don't have to provide transportation or special education services? And how is it choice when the voucher doesn't even cover the full cost at most private schools in Texas? If you gave my former students on the west side of San Antonio a $10,000 voucher, there's still no way they could afford a $20,000 a year private school. But here's the catch. The wealthy parent who is already sending their kid to a $20,000 a year private school is about to get a $10,000 discount, a $10,000 coupon at our expense. Vouchers are welfare for the wealthy. And by taking money out of our public schools and giving it to wealthy parents who don't need it, vouchers would be a massive, historic transfer of wealth from the bottom to the top. And the last thing I'll say, there are a lot of self-proclaimed Christians pushing these voucher scams. I can't think of anything more unchristian than stealing from the poor to give to the rich.
I did some research on these vouchers, and the Texas Tribune talks about it here. The Texas Senate's initial school voucher proposal would give families who opt out of the state's public schools $10,000 per child a year to help them pay for private tuition. But as James just eloquently described in that video, most private schools in Texas cost well over $10,000. So poor families still wouldn't be able to afford to send their kid to private school. That's why he's saying that there would be a massive transfer of wealth from the bottom to the top, because right now only rich families can afford private school for their children. This would just give them a discount because poor families still won't be able to afford it. This bill would pull funding away from public education funds and go right toward the subsidies to help wealthy families get a discount on their child's private education. I've got more here.
6 years ago, Greg Abbott showed up at this school behind me, Palmer Lane Elementary. He held a press conference with lots of cameras and promised to invest in public schools like this one. Now, this school behind me is at risk of closing because Greg Abbott has refused to invest a penny of new funding into our public schools since 2019. Now, Texas ranks 43rd in the nation in per-student education funding. Texas teachers are making less than they did 10 years ago when you adjust for inflation. And local property taxes are through the roof because our state government has failed to do its fair share of school funding. 6 years ago, Greg Abbott promised to invest in public schools like this one. Now he's letting them close. So what changed? Follow the money. A group of billionaires who want to privatize our Texas schools bought our governor. One of them, an East Coast billionaire named Jeff Yass, gave our governor one check for $6 million, the largest campaign contribution in Texas history. So now Greg Abbott is starving our public schools and pushing a private school voucher scam, which will take even more money out of schools like this one and put it in the hands of millionaires and billionaires. Greg Abbott broke his promise that he made here at Palmer Lane Elementary. He's no longer working for the nearly 6 million Texas school children. Now he works for billionaires who can write a $6 million check.
This guy is a great communicator, but I've got even more.
Texans need to understand what is happening at their state capital. A group of billionaires are attempting to dismantle public education in the second largest state in the country. They're pushing something called private school vouchers, which is really just using our taxpayer dollars to pay for private school tuition. They say it's to help working class kids go to private school. They call it school choice. It all sounds so noble, but it is the biggest scam I have ever seen. In the states that have already tried vouchers, the vast majority of the money ends up going to wealthy parents who already have their kids in private school.
I forget if he mentions it, but the reason a majority of the vouchers go to wealthy families is because, for example, a $10,000 voucher doesn't cover a majority of the cost of private schools in Texas. So poor and working families in Texas would have to pay $2,000, $4,000, up to $10,000 out of pocket to cover the rest of the bill for their private school in their district, because $10,000 isn't enough. So wealthy families who already have their children in private schools would utilize this and just receive a large discount. It's unfair.
In Arkansas, 82% of the voucher money went to rich parents who already had their kids in private school. In New Hampshire, it's 75%. In Florida, it's 70%. And every year, more money that would have gone to the public schools is now going to rich parents who don't need it, slowly starving the public schools. In Arizona, their voucher scam is already bankrupting their public education budget, because that's the point. That's the goal. These billionaires pushing vouchers have different reasons. Some of them have extreme religious views. Some of them have an ideological mission. Some of them own private schools that will profit off the new law once it's passed. But they all share the same goal: closing our neighborhood public schools. So Texans need to wake up. They need to call their state reps. They need to call their state senators. They need to call their lieutenant governor. They need to call their governor and demand that they put the interests of students over the interests of their billionaire megadonors.
If you're watching this and you live in Texas, please call your local rep, your local congressperson, call your governor's office, because this blatant corruption is evil. We don't need more wealth disparity. We don't need the wealthy taking more wealth from the bottom half of our society. In this case, these vouchers would just pull money from public funding, public education funding, and go right to the wealthy families. And that's unfair.